This item is to prepare for the topics for discussion at the next Marine Resources Committee, which is scheduled for November 6th and 7th, both full days. And there are a lot of topics proposed. From your work plan, there are 10 topics proposed. 8 of those are for discussion. And so again, we do need both of the days. This includes Marine Protected Area Regulation Change Petition evaluations. And the purpose is to receive the department's evaluation and recommendations for the MPA petitions in bin 1, those that have been evaluated in the near term, and potentially make a committee recommendation on those. And to discuss sorting of MPA petitions in bin 2, petitions that require additional policy guidance, information, or resources before evaluation, and the next steps. So that's MPAs. The next is market squid fishery management and fishery management plan review. Opportunity for a committee recommendation following the second discussion of the outcomes of the department's Squid Fishery Advisory Committee. Also, there's an item for red abalone recovery plan, specifically the aspect of discussing the risk tolerance for that the commission may have for reopening any red abalone fishery harvest in the context of the statewide recovery plan development. And there are 3 regulations that are scheduled for vetting and potential committee recommendation. One is kelp and algae commercial harvest regulations specifically for sea palm, Postelsia. The final department recommendations for recreational crab trap gear options and trap validations. And a discussion and potential recommendation for recreational barred sand bass fishery to receive and discuss the department working group update and potential regulatory options to address resource concerns. The committee we also propose to public vetting of one new state water bottom lease application in Tomales Bay for aquaculture purposes. And that's San Andreas Shellfish Company's application, and consistent with the commission's enhanced leasing process. And you heard that is also going to be discussed and vetted at the tribal committee meeting in December. The last 2 discussion items on the list were at the request of the commission in August, actually June, to have a discussion about the 2 EFP efforts that have been underway, one for box crab exploratory fishing, an update and discussion of what the department's been learning and observing from the years with the box crab EFPs, and then also a broader discussion about pop-up gear in the state managed fisheries. Finally, there are 2 updates from staff and other agencies proposed. These are often in written format. And one is an update on kelp recovery and management plan development, and then an update on the coastal fishing communities policy initial implementation steps. There are a number of comments in your meeting materials related to MPA petition evaluation process and some about squid fishery management. The Marine Resources Committee work plan in Exhibit 1 reflects the updates and as I described here today. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Susan. And if there are no other questions or comments on that, that takes us to agenda item 10C, which is Department Marine Region, and we're going to get an update on approach to bin 1 and bin 2 from Dr. Schuman. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you, President Murray, members of the Commission, Craig Schuman, CDFW. I'm going to provide an update on the MPA petition evaluation process, essentially where we've come from, where we are now, and where we are going. Next slide, please. So as a reminder of how we got here, the Decadal Management Review, or DMR, was released in December in 2022, received by the Commission in February of 2023. Following the release of the report, we held a symposium, several meetings with the full Commission and the Marine Resources Committee to discuss the prioritization of the 28 adaptive management recommendations outlined in the report. One of the recommendations identified as a near-term priority is to work closely with the Commission through the regulatory petition process to consider changes to the MPA network based on the results of the DMR. At the end of last year, the Commission received 20 petitions proposing various changes to MPAs, all of which were referred to the Department. Next slide, please. In February, the Commission referred all 20 petitions to the Department for evaluation and requested the Department develop an approach to evaluate the petitions. In March of 2024, the Department presented a draft 3-phase approach to evaluate and sort petitions for discussion at the MRC. The approach was approved by the MRC and by the full Commission at their April meeting. At the June meeting, the Commission requested the Department provide a progress update on the other 27 DMR recommendations at your August meeting. The Department proceeded with Phase 1 and evaluated and sorted the positions into 2 initial bins, released those initial sorting for tribal and public comment in May. Those were discussed and approved by the MRC in July and subsequently by the Commission in August. And then the Commission requested that we come today with this update here in October, and that we bring the recommendations on the Bin 1 petitions to the MRC in November. Next slide, please. So this flow chart outlines the 3-phased approach for the initial petition evaluation framework. So we have completed Phase 1, where whole petitions are binned. We are in the midst of Phases 2 and 3. So Phase 2 is separate petitions into individual actions. Those have been completed for Bin 1, and those are in process for Bin 2. And then Phase 3 is the adaptive management recommendations. Those are in process for Bin 1, which we will present at the November MRC. And we were just getting started on those in Bin 2 after we get the actions sorted out. Something to point out that the petition process that the Commission is not designed for iterations or changes, so we've already received a number of requests for amendments to petitions. So we're working closely with your staff and petitioners to try to figure out how we navigate that through the relatively rigid framework of the petition process that you have. Next slide, please. So we've been getting a lot of questions about Bin 2, recognizing that we're still on Bin 1. So here's where we're proposing to go with the Bin 2 actions is we'll take the Bin 2 petitions, break out all those petitions into their individual actions. The first step we will do is to determine which of those actions meet those Bin 1 criteria, meaning policy direction is not needed within Commission authority, immediate evaluation possible, limited clarification needed from the petitioner, and limited controversy anticipated. We'll move those into what I'm calling Bin 2.1. We're still working on a better name for that. And those could move forward with evaluation on a relatively rapid timescale. Those that do not meet those criteria will need either policy guidance, additional information, or potentially more resources. So how are we going to evaluate the petitions? So we're going to look at guidance Commission has already provided. Next slide, please. So last August, the Commission approved these 4 broader criteria to guide the petition development and subsequent review. These are to be compatible with the goals of the Marine Life Protection Act, help advance one or more of the 6 goals, garner community support, and or advance the DMR recommendations. Next slide, please. While those are overly broad, the Commission also identified several examples of considerations to guide the evaluation of proposed actions. This slide is not an exhaustive list, but is just an example of the types of things we're looking at as we go through the Bin 1 petitions. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, we are preparing to release the draft Bin 1 proposed actions in advance of the MRC meeting. Those will be discussed on day 1 of the 2-day MRC meeting. We're also working with our colleagues at the Ocean Protection Council and the staff and your staff here at the Commission, both on those recommendations and the sorting of the Bin 2 actions to see where those are going to shake out. We're trying to figure out how much detail we need to provide with those to try to get those into your binder deadline. We're anticipating that the MRC will make a recommendation on those Bin 1 actions in November, which should enable you at the full commission in December to consider those recommendations on the Bin 2 actions. And that'll be a good test case for us to see how we're doing on what we've all considered relatively low-hanging fruit, and we'll see how low-hanging those actually are. The other thing we're doing for December is we're preparing for our annual report. So last week we sent out a solicitation to tribes and partners asking for information to include in that report, and really focusing on those other 27 recommendations and what folks are doing both last year to include in this report, and then also to flesh out that table that we presented at your last meeting on everything that's going on across the network. We anticipate going to the March MRC meeting to discuss Bin 2 actions. Next slide, please. So again, just to highlight, this is not the only thing we are working on. Recommendation 4 is the petition evaluation process, and while that is taking up a lot of the air in the room, we are also focused on almost all of these near-term actions in conjunction with all of our partners and tribes. Next slide, please. So to wrap up, I just want to highlight that we did recently provide an update in what we're calling the petition story map. So we posted on our website and we sent out a blog post, really what we're envisioning as a one-stop shop for the petition evaluation process. And so we've heard a lot from tribes and stakeholders and partners, a lot of questions about the petition process. There's a lot of confusion out there, a fair amount of misinformation. So we created this story map where interested parties can go, they can look at individual petitions, there's a mapping function, you can toggle back and forth, see what's being proposed, see the rationale behind it. And we're also going to use this as a place to provide all of the information of where we are in the process, where we're going, what's next, what people can expect. Want to give a shout out to environmental scientist Kara Gonzalez. She really took the lead on envisioning this, designing it, and building it. As far as I can tell, largely on her own, certainly supported by the team, but this was really her project, her baby, so kudos to her. I know I've visited this site probably 20, 25 times since we released it about a week ago. It's just an amazing resource to look at the petitions. And finally, but before I wrap up, I do want to recognize Steve Wirtz, who's out there in cyberspace somewhere. So Steve has announced he'll be retiring at the end of November. He is the current supervisor over our MPA project. He's been with the department for over 30 years, almost half of which as the supervisor over the MPA project. So he became supervisor in 2011, and that was in that weird period between the adoption of the North Central Coast, which was the second study region, and the South Coast, which was the third study region. So Steve really guided the department's efforts through the South Coast planning process, the North Coast planning process, and then all of implementation up to where we are today. So thank you, Steve. You've done a tremendous service to the resources of California, the MPA network, and we're definitely going to miss you. Next slide, please. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Hello, commissioners and CDFW staff and commission staff. Thank you so much for all of the work that you are doing on the intensive Decadal Management Review adaptive management process. We're just so grateful for the clear commitment to fair evaluation of all of the petitions that have been put forward. Especially wanted to highlight the story map that Craig just mentioned. It really is an amazing tool, and it's great to have the visual representations to be able to talk to folks in the community about what we're proposing. And we also have been attending the MPA collaborative meetings up and down the coast, and it's just so notable how strong the attendance is from CDFW, from scientists to enforcement staff, and it's great to have their comments shared. I wanted to share a quick update. Environment California has put forward 2 petitions, one about expanding marine protected areas to encompass kelp forest habitat, and also one to strengthen the enforcement, to simplify enforcement, and a couple of MPAs. We've gotten lots of feedback, as I know you have as well, and we're continuing to do robust outreach and engagement. So far, we've had over 21,000 conversations with community members asking for input. We've also met with lots and lots of community groups to get feedback, and we've definitely gotten a lot of feedback. And so wanted to uplift the point that Craig also mentioned, that it would be really beneficial if there is a way for us to be able to put forward amendments to our petition that could incorporate some of that feedback, so that we can build consensus and support in advance of any regulatory action being considered. So thank you so much again. Have a good afternoon.
Good afternoon, commissioners and department staff. My name is Dave Rudy. I'm representing the California Sea Urchin Commission. We put forward together petition 2023-14 MPA approximately a year ago, and we appreciate the deliberative process that the Commission and the MRC are taking in evaluating these petitions. I also personally participated in 3 of the MPA collaboratives, and another member of the Sea Urchin Commission participated in another 2. So altogether in Mendocino, Sonoma, Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, and San Diego County, we presented our petition. We got very good support for our petition. We did have some comments about potential changes. We got some comments about potentially allowing a sport take, also potentially taking tribal take. We also had one comment about potentially changing from one SMCA to another SMCA that's adjacent in the Palos Verdes area. So I would like to understand what the next steps are as far as modifying our proposal, and I look forward to working with the department, the MRC, and the commission in moving forward with our proposal. Thank you very much.
President Murray, if I may, since we had 2 comments about this question of amendment, there's not an official process for amending other than resubmitting a new petition, which you don't want to do. So I think just a formal letter stating, as a petitioner, this is, through the process, we've like to see these changes based on public input is fine, because this is an iterative process. Petitions don't end, decisions don't, even if they get accepted, don't end up looking exactly like the petition, or they do very rarely. So I think that's a fine process, and maybe it's just helpful to state that now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, thanks for that, Commissioner Scar. We did talk a bit at the MRC in July about that issue too, and I know Craig and the team and the commission staff are still working on how exactly to frame it up, because there isn't an iterative process built into our MPA petition process. But I think what Craig had mentioned and what we talked about was choosing a date. If you have amendments you'd like to make to your petition, submit them by this date certain, because now evaluation will occur in earnest. Because we don't want people modifying, sending one in, modifying again, sending one in. So choosing a date by which, calling for modifications, I think is probably what we had come up with. Craig, I don't know if there's anything you want to add. You don't look poised to speak. Or, Chuck. Director Bonham, please, yes. Your mic wasn't on. I thought you might just be resting your chin.
Just jumping in front of the question and Craig's. I think some form of accepting iterations and incorporating makes sense. We shouldn't be so formalistic. We can't benefit from consensus emerging. Conversely, it can't be so kind of unbounded that you're consistently getting a proposed change, so you can't ever get to a decision.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Really appreciate those comments. The Sea Urchin Commission will be meeting next Saturday, and this will definitely help in our deliberation process. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. I know you flew up for this, Dave. Appreciate it.
Hi, President Murray, commissioners, department staff. Thank you so much for letting me comment. My name is Katie O'Donnell. I am the U.S. Ocean Conservation Manager at Wild Coast, and just wanted to reiterate some of the previous comments. The story map, I just wanted to share. I've already been sharing that. It's been a really great tool, and we really do appreciate that because it has helped, I think, already kind of address that misinformation and kind of addressing those comments of the petitions. So really, really appreciative of that work. And just wanting to share some of Wild Coast. We've been working on continuing our outreach. We've participated in the San Diego Collaborative meeting, and we also have had presentations and have more presentations scheduled with city councils at Solana Beach and Encinitas for our petition for protecting the tide pools, as they are important nurseries. And we're also going to be having public listening sessions as well. So just wanted to share that as well. We're continuing to do this outreach and engaging, and I'm looking forward to as well. I know I have a conversation with Susan Ashcraft for the amendment process as well. So very much looking forward to that, and really want to thank you all for your continued effort in this, and looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. My name is Tomas Valadez. I'm the California Policy Associate with Azul. I would like to commend the department and staff for all their hard work on the petition story map. As we've been doing our local outreach, we've encountered some confusion and misinformation surrounding some of our petitions. And so we really appreciate this new tool that will help in informing them regarding the petitions themselves. We also appreciate the clarity given the petition amendments and what that process will look like. And we also agree that setting clear dates would be really helpful to petitioners. Look forward to discussing the department's recommendations at the November MRC. Thank you.
And our final three speakers in the room, we have Sandy Aylesworth, Ricky Erickson, and Merritt McCrone. Please approach the lectern in any order.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. My name is Sandy Aylesworth with NRDC. We wanted to thank the department and commission staff, OPC, and the commissioners themselves for their really hard work on this process. We know it's very resource intensive. The significant efforts the department has made to support public engagement in the petition process is very much noticed and appreciated. The story map and the C-Sketch mapping tool are examples of those contributions. We also wanted to share a couple of quick thoughts about the link between this adaptive management process and 30 by 30. The MLPA states that adaptive management means a management policy that seeks to improve management of biological resources, particularly in areas of scientific uncertainty, by viewing program actions as tools for learning. Given the foundational goal of an MPA is to conserve biodiversity, and the guidance that adaptive management is to result in improved resource management, petitions that fail to enhance biodiversity conservation are inconsistent with this definition. We also wanted to note that adaptive management of the MPA network is one of the state's 4 key strategies to attaining the state's 30 by 30 goal, which calls for the state to conserve an additional 500,000 acres of coastal waters. In the opening of the DMR report, Secretary Crowfoot writes, "To protect biodiversity and fight climate change, California has committed to conserving 30% of its lands and coastal waters by 2030. This ambitious call to action inspires us to accelerate and improve conservation." CNRA's recent progress reports notes that the state has not added any conserved waters since the governor's EO was issued in 2020. We totally appreciate that adding these additional conserved marine acres is a difficult undertaking, and we support a deliberate and thoughtful approach. We support the proposed timeline to make recommendations on Bin 1 and Bin 2 petitions by March 2025. Thank you.
Whoops. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Ricky Erickson, marine ecologist with the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation. My sincerest thank you for all of your efforts to protect our ocean. We wanted to comment on the wealth of scientific information that is part of the Decadal Management Review and from around the globe that illustrates that our MPA network is indeed capable of achieving the goals that it was designed to accomplish. Over the past decade, we have had scientists working across taxa, habitats, and ecosystems around the world and in California and revealing previously unknown benefits of MPAs. The science is clear. Protection builds resilience, it increases biomass of targeted species, results in spillover, and fully protected areas are much more effective than partially protected. We know this from scientific research both here in California and across the world, and we are seeing these benefits in California in spite of the very young age and youth of our network. This body of scientific evidence should be foundational to adaptively managing the network. Our marine ecosystems are particularly dynamic with high inter and intra-annual variability. This makes site-specific research costly, time-consuming, and challenging. And for that, we are very thankful for the funding to address key gaps in our knowledge, including the fantastic story map that I hope you all have a chance to play with, and we are eager for the release of the Sea Sketch tool. Finally, we strongly encourage a closer working relationship among state agencies, particularly with the Ocean Protection Council, in reviewing petitions. Per the MLPA, OPC is the policy lead for the MPA network, and we encourage cooperation and collaboration between the agencies to accomplish our challenging goals. A dynamic future is, an uncertain future is before us, and we are grateful for your stewardship of our marine resources. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, President Murray and commissioners and staff. I am Merritt McCrae for the Sport Fishing Association of California. I want to support the proposed MRC agenda for November 6th and 7th. There are at least two issues that are very important to my constituents. One is the sand bass limits item that is currently scheduled, and of course the MPA petitions and their further consideration and analysis. I want to take at this time an opportunity to recognize the CDF&W staff that has helped us with the sand bass working group, Kirsten Ramey, Armin Barilotti, Heather Glinick, and also I want to recognize Susan Ashcraft for standing in and listening in on our most recent meeting. It's good to know that you guys have ears on this process all the way along. You're expected to hear this sand bass limits item first on December 12th. So that's how the schedule is currently set up. With respect to the marine protected area proposals, I'd like to point to my written comment under this agenda item. So if you take a look there, an opportunity to look it over at some point. And also my testimony in Fortuna, again, which is recorded in video. And with that, I'll thank you for your time.
Moving now to our speakers on Zoom, we will begin with the participant who has joined as Zoom user, followed by Judy Mancuso and Claire Ara. Participant who joined as Zoom user, go ahead.
Again, thank you so much for allowing us to have a chance to speak. In regards to the MPAs, I think there should be a very critical evaluation on the management.
Could you tell us what your name is?
Oh yeah, my name is Liza. I had commented earlier. I'm a commercial fisherman out of Monterey Bay.
Great, thank you.
I really want to focus on the management of the current MPAs that we already have to include adapting those MPAs to fulfill the 30 by 30 requirements and to reevaluate denying the offshore wind farms, which are going to dominate 583 square miles of proposed current lease to offshore wind farms. I think it's also important to consider some stewardship or management of the MPAs to include some access. I do think there is an important topic here about the sea urchins and sea urchin removal, especially during the breeding months of January and March. I don't agree that a dredge format is appropriate given that it disturbs the seafloor, which is full of eggs and small fish. I also believe that commercial fishermen should get the first contracts of any management that is needed for sea urchin or other types of threatening species, and that some effort should be put into other operations of supporting the kelp, such as possibly increasing the size limit of sheep's head or having a sheep's head hatchery, and that we should look into what caused the sea star waste syndrome, and that the runoff of homelessness, coastal homelessness, and the increase of whale watching and whale watching pump off at the 3-mile limit may have a factor in sea star wasting syndrome, and we should look at the pump off of recreational vessels and how they impact our coastal sanctuaries and how they impact our MPAs. I think it's important to take some responsibility of pollution and land runoff in addressing some of these bigger picture issues. And what else did I have to say here? That Hawaii is a great reference on the effects of human fecal matter runoff affecting reefs, and that we should look at things outside of fishing as reasons why our kelp beds are depleted, and we should take responsibility for that.
Judy Mancuso, go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you, and thanks for the story map and your work. The Blue Belt Coalition, City of Laguna Beach, Environmental Sustainability, and many groups and individuals have been a part of your process since the beginning of the year. We have urged you to move our petition from bin 2 to 1. We do not need amendments. We are the low-hanging fruit. And if the time has passed for getting into bin 1, please make us, as Dr. Schumann referred to, as a 2.1 that can and should be expedited. I am currently running for city council, and this petition in particular, people do want to speak about, and it is widely supported. I've had multiple events in Three Arch Bay, and quite frankly, the residents there don't understand why they were left behind 10 years ago and want to be included in this pass. So please help us by getting us expedited and widening this protection. It will help us with enforcement and help the state get to its goals as well. Thank you very much.
Claire Are, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Hello, all. My name is Claire Ari, and I am the Program Manager for the MPA Collaborative Network. The MPA Collaborative Network has held meetings in nearly all 14 coastal collaboratives in late summer and early fall. We've invited petitioners and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife as guest speakers to these meetings. At these meetings, CDFW updated participants on the adaptive management process and timeline, including that it is not too late to provide input. These petitioners also provide presentations at collaborative meetings to discuss their petitions and to get feedback from the community members. Some of these people have already presented to you today. We would like to extend a huge thank you to all of those that have participated and submitted input to the MPA petitioners. As it has already been stated, there is a need for a way to update petitions. So it has been requested of us that we suggest that for clear guidance to be given to petitioners so that they are able to understand the next steps as it comes to petition amendments. Thank you.
This is Casper Kazazi with California Surf Fishing, commenting on agenda item 10B. We appreciate the tough work that the MRC is doing to evaluate these MPA proposals. We support our MPA network and can vouch for its effectiveness and its spillover effect. We support the proposed evaluation process by the MRC that takes into account all stakeholders, including our historically underrepresented surf fishing community. We look forward to an evaluation process that is in alignment with the original Marine Life Protection Act and subsequent DMR recommendations. We support the MRC's proposed implementation of an amendment/iteration process for the petitions and their individual action items that we've talked about today. And we definitely support an open dialogue between petitioners and us, the stakeholders. Thank you guys for your time. Hope to see you guys at the next MRC meeting. And yeah, let's see what happens.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ray Heimstra with Orange County Coastkeeper. I want to go ahead and start off by thanking the staff and the Commission and everybody, OPC, DFW, for all the wonderful work so far. Yeah, the story map is really awesome. I specifically want to highlight an unresolved process issue that has been brought up in public comment in previous meetings, and that's how local agencies can assist in the petition review process. Specifically, the City of Laguna Beach has submitted a letter asking the Commission for guidance on when and how to start a public process at the city level to address the 2 petitions in their area. One of these petitions is in bin 1 and another in bin 2. So guidance from the Commission on this sooner rather than later will be very helpful to all local agencies and help facilitate the process. We've been told specifically by city staff they are actually not holding hearings and public meetings right now because they're waiting for guidance. So I just want to emphasize that they are looking for that, and hopefully they'll see it soon. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Chris Voss again. I want to add to my earlier comments. I didn't realize we were going to have this opportunity to speak directly to the binning process and the petition process. So thank you for this opportunity to allow me to elaborate. Earlier, I mentioned that a lot of frustration lies in the confusion between 30/30 and this petition process. And I feel as though either the state should decide to use this petition process to fulfill the 30/30 obligation, or suppress this petition process, meaning get rid of the petitions that dramatically increase existing MPAs or add new MPAs, take it out of the petition process and allow 30/30 to proceed in a process similar to what's being developed for bin 2. So I just think that it's confusing for stakeholders to have 2 processes that have a similar objective. And it would, I think, benefit all of us if there was some executive decision made that would simplify the situation and potentially take this process, the complicated aspects of it, out of the department's Fish and Wildlife's hands and put it in the OPC's hands, since they seem to be managing the 30/30 process, or vice versa. So I'm speaking to our frustration as fishing interests around having to deal with the confusing aspects of 2 processes. Thank you.
Hi. Hello, Commissioners. My name is Bradley Pierman. I live in Goleta, California, and I'm a member of Santa Barbara Freedivers, which is a recreational spearfishing club with members from Cayucas down to Malibu. We at the Santa Barbara Freedivers want to say thank you to the Commissioners and the department staff for all of your hard work you do, and especially around these petitions. We appreciate all of your efforts to protect our waters and to keep them healthy and clean. Also, a special thanks for the work on the Story Map website that shows maps and summaries for each of the petitions in front of the Commission. It's very good work, and it's very easy to navigate and share. As you consider the bin 1 petitions, I want to call your attention to a very thorough review of the science presented in petition 2023-33 and other petitions that look at climate change and state that kelp resiliency and restoration will help us with the effects of climate change. This thoughtful paper by conservation scientist Dr. Jason Johns is entitled "A Petition to Expand California Marine Protected Areas Contradicts Science and Itself." His article throws the entire premise into question that increasing MPAs to increase kelp density by disallowing fishing will help mitigate the effects of climate change. Dr. Jason Johns' paper is available on our homepage at sbfreedivers.com. I hope you're all able to make time to read this pertinent paper on these important and pivotal petitions. We'd also like to add our support to Chris Voss's recent comments to combine the efforts of the current petition process and the processes for 30x30 to help simplify things for those of us in the fishing communities. Thanks again, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, David, and many thanks to our speakers. Looking to my fellow commissioners for thoughts, questions. Okay, yeah, Vice President Zavaleta.
Yeah, thanks, President Murray, and thanks to all the speakers today. I just want to echo a couple of things. Appreciation for the story map. It's fabulous to be able to see the overall network and to interact with it, and for people to be able to see how it might change, how it might be affected by changes via this big and unwieldy petition process. You know, I'm personally spending a lot of time with these petitions, and yet totally like seeing new things because we have the story map. So huge thanks to Karen Gonzalez. I also want to appreciate the potential for amendments to the petitions. And I want to thank folks who brought that issue up, because I think it's really important that as understanding grows of the diverse communities who are going to be affected in various ways by each of the proposals, that there be the opportunity for us to have this process. I just want to make sure that as those amendments come up, and if it's via letter, that those stay with the petitions through the rest of the process. So I guess that's an ask to the department for them not to just sort of stay in the, you know, thick meeting materials somewhere in the archives, but that those particular petitioner suggestions for changes based on new knowledge, new input, stay with the petitions. We had a comment about misinformation. I appreciate that too. I share that concern. I think there is a lot of misinformation out there about the petitions all around, about the relationships of specific proposed actions to fishing and also to protecting marine biodiversity and ocean ecosystems, to climate change, and also to long-term marine conservation goals. So I'm really concerned about it too. I'm concerned about the use of misinformation, whatever direction that's coming from, to mislead members of the public in whatever direction to form opinions about, take positions on these petitions. And the reason I highlight that is that underscores to me the importance of a role for the department or an independent scientific technical committee to weigh in early on this issue in relation to all the petitions. In bin 1, I think that's by department staff. In bin 2, I wanted to ask for clarification about whether that's likely to be by staff or through some external process. And I'll pause there. Dr. Schumann, maybe you can give me a sense of that.
Yeah, so when we get to the bin 2 actions, I think the low-hanging fruit, the ones that are ready for evaluation, will likely be at the staff level. And then there's going to be a tranche of them that were identified, will likely be identified, that will need additional data collection. And so that's where some of the tools will come online, C-Sketch, the connectivity model. Okay. We've talked about the idea about an independent science advisory team. We've also talked about not doing MLPA 2.0, so I think that'll be part of the discussion we want to have, is when we get into some of the sticky science questions, what data do we have, what tools do we have, and then if we want to go out for peer review, and how do we go from there? And I believe the director has some thoughts as well.
Vice President, I think about your question on bin 2 and like independence and objectivity somewhat similar to my answer on amendments or not. Mm-hmm. I think yes, balancing, we could create a process that goes on a really long time at great expense, both cost and participants' time and money. I don't think that's the right outcome. Conversely, I don't think these decisions should be made like in a vacuum, in a smaller space. They should be made in a transparent, open space, and people should understand the basis on which the decisions are being made. My instinct tells me that even if you did find the right balance in those spectrums, you will still have participants in this discussion with strongly held different views. I mean, just how people have come to this illustrates you probably can't, quote, science your way out of it. So, whatever the right dynamic of enough, whatever the childhood story of the bears is, it's it's too soft, it's too hard, it's just right. We've got to figure out what just right looks like here for purposes of decision making.
Yeah, thank you, Director Bonham. And I really appreciate that, and I want to be clear, like, if anything, I'd like to unclutter the process and uncomplicate the process. And so, you know, I think the way that I was wondering, I mean, I guess if staff are evaluating, that's great, and I really like the idea that compatibility with the MLPA, and that advancing the DMR recommendations get used early to filter proposals that are contained within the petition.
Yep.
So if anything, to move more quickly right to that 2.1 bin, or to... Yeah.
And for better or for worse, I actually am planning on coming to the November 2-day MRC, which I haven't been to an MRC in quite some time. And if you follow our Fortuna discussion, which was at the commission level, I think the theory was we should really use November and December and end the calendar year with a heightened sense of organization and structure for timeline getting through bin 2.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I wish that there were a way to be at MRC too for all of us. I think I want to just underscore how much I value these conversations coming here to the full commission too, so that we can kind of continue to be on top of how it all is progressing, because it is a lot. And I want us to be able to keep moving them forward. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that, Vice President Zavaleta. Thank you so much for the story map. I want to pile on that love fest. It really is the best. And I think that, coupled with C-Sketch, I think having these data visualization tools that really will act as decision support tools will be very helpful for commissioners, for the department, for stakeholders, for anyone who wants to, A, learn more about this process in a way that is visual and more accessible, and B, it's easy to share a QR code really broadly, right? And I understand that not everybody has access to how to use a QR code. There's a learning curve there too, but it's having them all in one place versus in a PDF buried, nested in meeting materials, that's more challenging. So I'm so grateful about having a story map and then having a C-Sketch tool to go along with that. I've got a few more things to say, but it looks like, Craig, you want to jump in on that particular piece.
Yeah, just briefly, because I know you know this, but just again to clarify any misinformation. So the story map is essentially a static tool to explain what the petitions are and where we are in the process, whereas C-Sketch, when it comes online, will be a tool to use for evaluation and looking at how those proposals may affect the network and that sort of thing.
Yeah, thanks for that. And, you know, on that note, I agree. We don't live in a world where science says do X or science says do Y. That's almost not ever the case, right? Like, issues are interdisciplinary. They're about science. They're about the present. They're about the future. They're about economics. They're about social justice. They're about coastal communities. They're about statewide communities. So if we think that there's going to be some clear line for any of these petitions that says, if this, then that, that's probably not going to happen. Maybe for some of them, maybe for bin 1, right? But ultimately, I think, you know, the commission is going to have to take the information we have, which in many cases is going to be quite robust. In some cases, like with everything we do, there may be some gaps, and we're going to make policy calls on, for this petition, you know, this is how much, this is what the change would be to habitat that is inside an MPA. This is what the change would be for local communities. This is what the change would be for socioeconomic, short-term, long-term. Those would be the kinds of things we would be weighing as a commission and then choosing on a case-by-case basis. And so to me, I think the process laid out before us it looks really good. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think when we talk about all the petitions bundled together in a vacuum, it's a phantom, right? It's a big, scary beast. But when you pull them out and take them one at a time, I think it's something that we can do. I think it's manageable. On the amendments, we should talk about that. When to, like we said, like choose a date. Of course we want amended proposals, because to me that means those are compromises. Those are people getting closer to yes. And while I really do want to be cautious about, inadvertently incentivizing controversy or saying anything short of consensus equals controversy, because I don't think consensus is probably mostly going to be realistic either. I think amended proposals are a symbol of people talking and making compromises and getting closer to yes. And that just makes our job easier, right? That puts it puts the power back in the hands of the people, and it makes our jobs much, much easier. There was something else I wanted to say. I would just ask, there's a lot of misinformation out there, as you said, Vice President Zavaleta, on all sides. I like to believe that most of it is accidental. I don't know if it's all accidental. I've gotten calls from reporters saying, hey, I heard next week you're voting on the Point Loma State Marine Reserve. And I think, where did you hear that? I met with Southern California and San Diego spiny lobster fishermen, commercial fishermen, who were like, hey, why is Point Loma in bin 1? And I said, it's not. Where did you hear that? And so most people, once they hear what's actually going on, feel a lot better and feel less scared. So I would just ask all the people who are on Zoom, who are in this room, who are tracking it, just please go tell everyone you can find what the process actually is, and that, for bin 2, we haven't even started talking about the substance or the merits. That's in the future. Nobody's missed anything. We've only been talking about process, and for me, I'm really committed to a process. I'm not committed to an outcome. I just want to make sure we make our way through these petitions one at a time and evaluate them each, because people took the time to put them in, and I think people deserve that. So, Commissioner Sklar.
Yeah, President Murray, thanks for those comments, and Vice President Zavaleta for yours as well. I do have, I believe in the process too, and the committees are set up to do that process, and often to come to the compromises that we bring to the commission. I do have concern on MPAs in particular, but maybe more broadly, that work gets done at the commission, and then we're going to go through it all again here at the committee and gets redone at the commission here. And if that's going to be the case, if there's not going to be the kind of trust of the commission for the committees to do their work, and on something this big that involves so much time, we're adding an extra day to our MPA meeting or MRC meetings, and we'll be doing that probably pretty regularly across next year. I'm not willing to devote that extra day every 3 months to the committee meetings, only to find that we're going to go through the same process back here. I think this first bin 1 will maybe show us how that's going to work, but if it turns out that we have to go through the same process and redo the compromises here, then I think we ought to consider moving the MPA process entirely to the commission and adding a day to the commission meetings, because otherwise you're asking two of us to do double the work for no reason. And so I just want to put that on the table.
Thank you for raising that, Commissioner Sklar. I agree a lot. I mean, I would hope that this commission could, just as we trust the WRC on things like white sturgeon or bear hunting, or trust the tribal committee to take the time to get in the weeds on co-management or subsistence fishing. I mean, that really is the place for getting in the weeds, and that doesn't mean we don't still talk about it at the commission, but I agree with Commissioner Sklar, doing it twice doesn't make sense for anybody. So if that is, I mean, I agree this will be a good sort of pilot project to see how the bin 1 recommendations go in December, but if we don't believe that the MRC is the place for having those really weedy discussions where we have an exchange, it's a discussion, right? It's not just everybody gets 2 minutes, or in the case of MPAs, there were times when we had really long commission meetings where people got 30 seconds, and, it's important to be able to take the time to have a discussion and a dialogue, and, I just want to reinforce what Commissioner Sklar said, because if it's all going to happen at the commission anyway, then we have to commit to 3-day commission meetings for the next, 18 months or something.
Yeah, I guess I just want to respond to that last part, because both of you brought it up. I mean, I think well, I guess the first thing I should say is it's certainly not an issue of trust. I have enormous regard for both of you and your ability to work your way through the weeds. And I think that this set of petitions includes a lot of potentially really consequential and relatively permanent consequences for, you know, like the full circle of people and communities who we work with. So this does feel a little different to me. I would feel better about, despite the extra time it would involve, the opportunity, as Commissioner Hostler-Carmison raised at the last meeting, to be in those conversations, because it's a lot to digest. I know that sounds kind of backwards. So I think the difference isn't in, you know, the level of trust. I think it's in the consequential nature of at least some of these petitions. And so I'm fine with the bin one experiment, but I would support bringing it to the full commission in order to not do it twice.
And again, I'm the new guy on the block, so I wasn't here for the first time. But, you know, and again, you know, I yield to the expertise of you guys. But being the new person, I think, you know, we have an independent voice, and people are expecting us to go ahead and weigh in on this stuff. And if it's already a predetermined decision by the time it comes to the commission, we lose our opportunity to communicate, you know, our individual positions. And with something this important and so many people engaged, I think I would support the vice chair is to figure out how, under your direction, how we can all feel like we were part of the process.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you to both of you. That makes a lot of sense to me. I guess I would ask, though, I think about like bear hunting or white sturgeon. I mean, white sturgeon, we had no shortage of meetings and discussion at the commission level, too. And of course, there's always going to be, you know, the minimum three meetings, you know, the notice, the discussion, the adoption hearing, where there would be all that. But there would be more than that, too, because we would be checking in still at every stage. So I just want to make sure that we're not creating like a false choice here, right? Like that if we have the discussions where people get more than 1 minute each at the MRC, that means we don't discuss it at all at the commission. I don't think that was what Commissioner Sklar was saying. I just think not taking hours and hours every single time MPAs, you know, come up. You know, MPAs are on the agenda like 3 times today already. And so I just think there are ways to handle it where the really meaty discussions are happening at the MRC, and then certainly discussion too at the commission, but not at the same depth on every petition anyway. Yeah, I see Commissioner Hostler-Carmison. Yeah, please, Jackie.
No, I just think it's going to take its own path. I like the process that Dr. Schumann has laid out. I think that's excellent. I trust you and Commissioner Sklar completely at MRC. But the context is missing for us who can't go to MRC. And so that's going to be the challenge, is to convey what happened in MRC to the full commission. And we will have questions, and we will want to deliberate on certain things. And there may be comments that raise, you know, I mean, I don't think that we can put it in the box of it will be one way or the other. I think it'll be what it becomes. And especially with the history of going through MLPA. I mean, oh my gosh, no one was prepared for the path that took. And it was amazing in the end, but the time was just horrendous. So, you know, I just want to, being the senior commissioner here as far as going through MLPA, I mean, you know, in my area, I was heavily involved. I just don't think that we can really quantify what's going to happen. I think we can try really hard to make sure it's efficient and streamlined, and we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember too, I was at all the all Central Coast, North Central Coast, South Coast, North Coast meetings as well. And we don't have a Blue Urban Task Force. That's not an intermediary that we have this time, right? But there was a reason that was done, so it didn't all land in the lap of the commission. This is not to the same scale. So I think it can be different. But Director Bonham, you had something to say.
Your decision to make on like structure, I am empathetic, because we will all end up living it. Commissioner Scalar's point, like you could do 100% of the work at a committee and then repeat 100% of the same work at whether all is at committee or all is at commission or the hybrid, much is at committee and space fully reserved at commission. I think you're probably headed to some moment where you've got an independent day where you're going to have to set aside, and it's in some part of your calendar, and you just got to notice it that way. And then this turns into just agenda management with your staff. And often you have so much going on, a given day is just hard to get through all the topics, let alone. So I think you're down at like the operational, how are you going to schedule this out in the calendar? And it feels like you're headed towards some version where wherever the emphasis on the syllable is, you need all 5 of you present for multiple hours at some point somehow.
Yeah, Director Bynum, I think that was very helpful, because it probably will be some hybrid, and I wasn't suggesting today that we make a decision one way or the other. I just wanted to get out on the table so we think about it as we go through this first phase, because I think it will inform well how we can make this process reasonably efficient.
But I do believe, Commissioner, that, you know, it's important for all of us because, you know, we will get approached just as you guys do, and people are going to want to know what is our position in all of this, what's our ability to have input in the process, and I think we need to understand that, you know, fairly soon in the process so we can start to articulate that to people.
Susan, did you have something to add?
Thank you. This is a great discussion. I just want to harken back to just clarify. We'd like to bring some more clarity around the petition amendment process to the November MRC. As you know, all this really good clarity around what the individual petitioned actions are and the information's in the storyboard, story map that the department released. It's also on commission documents and with partners. It's a range of places. So we want to make sure that we have clarity around a pathway that can be, you know, maintain that public transparency and keep everybody, not further the confusion out there. So we'd like to bring some of that to the MRC.
Thanks, Susan. I should also mention I won't be at the November day 1 of the MRC meeting. It's the day after the election, and I teach, and I really need to be with my students teaching in my ocean law and policy class that next morning, so I won't be able to be at the MPA day, unfortunately, regrettably. But Co-Chair Sklar will be there, and I will be there for day 2. All right, so with that, we have some motions. Yeah. I don't think your mic's on. Is it?
I apologize. I move that the commission approves the changes to the tribal committee work plan and approves the agenda topics for the December 10, 2024 tribal committee meeting as discussed today.
Second.
So we've got a motion by Commissioner Sklar and a second by Commissioner Anderson. Sherry, could you read the roll?
Commissioner Sklar?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Hostler-Carmison?
Aye.
Vice President Zavaleta?
Aye. So the motion passes unanimously, and we have one more motion to make, I believe.
I move that the commission approves the draft agenda topics for the next meeting, a committee meeting for the November 6-7, 2024, and approves changes to the work plan as discussed today.
I second. So a motion by Commissioner Anderson, a second by me. Sherry, could you read the roll?
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
President Murray?
Aye.
Commissioner Sklar?
Aye.
Commissioner Hostler-Carmison?
Aye.
Vice President Zavaleta?
Aye. So the motion passes unanimously.